Welcome to Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne. I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 take action success coach and strategist, empowering, educating, inspiring, and igniting people to take action with jet propulsion. We assist people to find and embrace their life purpose, live their highest vision, become the best version of themselves, forging a strong foundation to source to success. Find out more information about how to work with us and my team, visit us at ldcstrategies.com. Our goal here at Healthy Lifestyle is to empower minds, educate hearts, inspire action, and ignite success so you can choose to have a fulfilled, healthy, emotional, spiritual, and physical life to live the life you have always wanted and dreamed. Welcome to the show. We are going to light you up with some verbal caffeine with all kinds of possibilities with our guest today. Our guest today is Stephanie Caputo. Stephanie is a genealogist for over 12 years. She was a computer programmer and analyst for 25 years before she discovered that she really loved doing genealogy. She is excellent, and I mean excellent, at finding information that's hard to find, historical records, as well as newspapers. She's published 2 articles with her dad about the Scott Joplin's family and so much more. Welcome to the show. So happy to have you on, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you.
I'm just so excited to have you here because you're a genealogist. So explain to our listeners what a genealogist does.
Yes, okay. Now, this is my point of view. I research the records that are available. I would what you would call a desktop genealogist or an armchair detective, because I don't go visiting states or visiting, places where you used to have to go. That's what my dad did, the old-fashioned way. I do it from my desktop. And of course, being in computers for so many years, I understand the ins and outs of how to do this. And I find the facts. But more importantly, what I like to do is to then take those facts and take them to the historical newspapers. And I try to find the stories that go with them, because in my opinion, my job is to do is to take all of these pieces that you find, the birth records or death records and all these little pieces, but you want to assemble them together and form a whole picture to make a story. And so that's where the newspapers come in handy. I also reach out to people online who are related to people I'm researching to find out what they've got. A lot of times other people have pictures that you're looking for or stories that you're looking for. But I think it's more than just finding the facts. I've seen other professional output of professional genealogists, where it's, the family tree and the levels and who the great grandfather was and to me, that's just very cold and flat. I want to fill it out with the stories, with the juice, with the gossip, and understand who these people were, and not just not just the facts, but to bring them back to life.
Yeah, that's one of the things I felt with Ancestry.com is, yeah, I can build my family tree and blah, blah, but I don't know a lot. I only go back so far with the knowledge of what I was told.
Yes.
And what I was told seemingly is very different than, on one side anyway, than what actually occurred. So I thought that was a very interesting phenomenon. But I don't know. I was trying to think back to that side of my family. And I don't know if I knew that particular story about my great-grandfather, which we won't go into right now, but my great-grandfather had an interesting background.
I'll tell you, I have not researched a family yet that doesn't have an interesting background. And it's usually a surprise to the people that I'm working with.
Yeah, well, because back then, not as much, I think, these days, or maybe it is. It just seems like everybody throws up their life on social media and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you do kind of know everything, but there are always those family secrets.
Yes.
And things that they don't get passed down. It's like, oh, we don't talk about that. It's funny, in my family, on one side of my family, I'm known as Lorianne. On the other side of my family, they would call me Christina because they didn't like the name Lori. So they would just call me Christina. So I just answered it both. Just easier. And I asked my mom one day, I was like, why do they call me Christina? And she goes, oh, they just didn't like the name Lori. And I was like, okay. all right, we'll just go with that. And I went on my way. And I
Sounds to
remember
me like there's a story behind that one.
there has to be a story behind that. I don't know what it is, but it was very interesting. And I go by Lorianne now because in first grade, and I don't know if I ever told you this story, in first grade, there were 4 Lories in my class and a Lorraine, and I don't like Lorraine. And if you put Lorianne together, it kind of looks like Lorraine. So when somebody calls me that, I'm like, not that that's not a beautiful name, but I just don't like it. It's not my name. But they call me Lori D, not Lori. And I did not like that. First grade. I did not like that. So I went up to the teacher and I was like, I don't like being called Lori D. Just call me Lori. And she goes, well, I can't do that, honey, because you won't know which Lori I'm talking to. And I was like, oh, well, then call me Lori Ann. She goes, well, that's not your legal name. Because Ann was my middle name. And she goes, you have to, that's not your legal name. I went, oh, okay. I went home that day. I marched into the house and I went, Mom, I need my name changed legally. And my mom's looking at me going, what now? What's going on? So she had a conversation with the teacher the whole night and they changed my name legally to my first name being Lorianne.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really kind of cute, but it really, really identifies who I am way back then. It's like,
Now,
really?
someday genealogists will be puzzling over that one.
Yeah. 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 You'll be like, I know this story. So how did you get into genealogy? You mentioned about your father, who is very well known, Scott
Yes.
family,
But
right?
before that, I first got into it 12 years ago when my father-in-law passed, and Phil and I, my husband Phil and I, we were cleaning out the house, and we found this old photo album that he had kept, one of those old ones on black paper.
Yeah, yeah, with the little black corners.
Yes, and
Yeah,
he was at Normandy during D-Day during World War II. He was a gunner in the Navy. And he was also a photographer, not a professional photographer, but he took a lot of pictures. He developed them himself, and he had this wonderful scrapbook that was literally falling apart. So I took it and took each picture and cut each one out. He'd also, underneath each picture, wrote, God bless him, he wrote what it was and where it was. So I took it all, but there was no real order to it. So the first thing I did is I had to research World War II to understand the correct chronological order of these photographs. And then I decided to add in some information about his life and some family photos and how he was drafted. I even had his draft card, which I got from Ancestry, and bringing him straight through. His brother was in the Air Force, and I have photographs of the two of them at the end of his life, both wearing their hats and all. And I created this wonderful Shutterfly book, which we then shared with family. And we then took the actual photographs and donated them to the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, which we have visited twice with the curator, and she has shown us where they keep the photos and how they keep the photos. This way, in my house, they would just deteriorate. Now that I have them all scanned, we gave them, to the museum.
Yeah, I always felt sad because I was associated with some arts councils and things like that, and so often people pass, and then the people who really know anything about it, so they throw the pictures out, and I'm like, no, don't do that, because it's a wealth of history. It's like
Absolutely.
it tells a story,
Absolutely.
and you want to know what that story is. I look at old pictures and I want to know what the story is. Like, what's the real
The
story?
pictures to me are the gold. In fact, on that subject, a few years ago, it was before COVID, I went to a garage sale of a woman who was moving. And we went down into her basement, and the basement was like a hoarder's nightmare. She actually lived in the same house she grew up in. So there were 2 generations full of memorabilia and things in the basement. And there were 2 things I picked up. There were scrapbooks. And she said, these are going to get thrown out if nobody buys them. So I said, well, I'll take them. I think she charged me $1 each. And I had them all this time, and I haven't been thinking about it. I kept saying, I've got to try to find this family. It was a scrapbook of the Halleck family.
Okay.
And
Halleck. Oh, okay.
yes. And so I reached out on Ancestry, and I didn't get any answers. Finally, I reached out to the Rocky Point Historical Society through their website. And I'd never gotten a response. So finally, I just picked up the phone to call them. within 15 minutes, I got a call back. Oh my God, we want this book. We want it so badly. They've lost everything. The next day she came and picked it up. And these pieces are now in their museum.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Rocky Point is on Long Island. Those
Yes,
are the places that you've been mentioning. And Halleck is a very well known, there's a
yes,
road, there's a couple of roads actually named
yes.
Halleck on Long Island in the on the North Shore. That's really
Exactly.
interesting. I have a photographer friend. Her name is Terry Alfieri, Alfieri Photography, and she can take old pictures that even if you're missing part of it, she can recreate it. So she
That's
does
brilliant.
restoration of
I love
photos.
that.
And she's brilliant. I watched her do this one photo and
Um,
half of it was ripped off and she just restored it. It's totally brilliant.
That's
She's
terrific.
and she does it in a matter, not a lot of time. It's not like
Yeah,
it takes months and months. She does
that's
such a good
great.
job with it. Yeah. So if you're interested in anything like that, she is just amazing with that. But yeah, I always was like, I have a box of photos from my mom and dad. And I don't know a lot of the people, a lot of those black paper with the corners on it. My mom too, in her gorgeous handwriting, she had the most exquisite handwriting. She went to a Catholic school and the nuns would have them write. And she had beautiful handwriting. She could never be a doctor. Her handwriting was too neat. Oddly enough, my brother David is a doctor and he has beautiful handwriting,
Oh,
but that's another story. It's like calligraphy. That's how gorgeous
uh-huh.
it is. But she would write on the back of the photos, this, that, and the
Very
other.
important.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the names. They have no bearing for me, so I don't have any stories. So I'm like, okay, is that
What
is
you know
that
what you should do is scan them
yeah,
and scan the backs where there is something, because someday that will become very important. So many pictures that I have only in reproduction of other people who took pictures, but they didn't take the back.
yeah,
And I always want to know what was on the back,
right, because
because
that's what
that
they
will,
used to do. They used to write on
yes,
the
it could
back.
give you a clue not only as to who it was, where it was, when it was.
Yeah,
You could get certain clues. So, and my grandfather used to always tell us my whole life growing up, right on the back of the picture, who it is and when it is. But now I see the importance because I have many pictures with nothing on them. But I had a family that was just entrenched in their own genealogical story. And I was told the story of the Berlins and the Raphaels over and over again growing up. So I kind of knew that one. So we're lucky. I have a lot of stuff. I have a lot of old photographs and letters and things like that.
that's really cool when you start looking back. Because I just started, and I know that you've done some research for me on both sides of my family.
Yeah.
And just having that, I had wished that my mom or my dad had done the chart. So I know some things, so I can recreate some of the things, but most of it not. And now I'm finding
Mhm.
things out. I was like, I never knew that. And it's funny. One of the things I found out is my great grandfather's name on one side was Giovanni, and Giovanni was the name I was going to name my son Nicholas.
Oh,
But I got
wow.
outruled because they said no, he'd need to come with slip covers in the United States, so that would not work. Because I love that name and I didn't know why, and I was like, maybe now I know why.
Oh,
Because
that's funny.
yeah, it's just it stays in your cells. What is the thing that's most rewarding about doing genealogy and doing this research?
Well, let's see. I love my favorite things is when I find something I've been searching for a long time. Something where many of the finds that I have that are really good ones have mistakes in them, and that's why other people haven't found them. So when I can find something like that, um, for example, Scott Joplin's in the New York 1915 census had never been found. I found it because I know how to look for mistakes.
Yeah,
And then within my own family, it's very similar. Their genealogy is filled with mistakes. Old newspapers are filled with mistakes. So
yeah.
the way to find the really good stuff is to understand how to search for mistakes. And I've gotten really good at that. And so when I can find something, that rings my bell. That really like I found this article about Scott Joplin's father, where he talks about who his master was.
And
So
who's got Joplin to remind
Scott
my
Joplin was yes, he was the famous ragtime performer from the 1890s to 1917 when he died. You might know The Entertainer, the song from The
sure.
Sting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Coming
so,
from a musical family, I knew Joplin. They played it all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just in finding certain things just because of the because I'm able to find the mistakes. I love that. I love finding old photographs if I can, because I always want to know what the people looked like. To
Yeah.
me, it's all about bringing them back to life. And it's hard to bring someone back to life if you don't know what they look like.
Yeah.
I often have pictures in my head of what I think they're going to look like. And then I get an actual picture. And I said, oh my gosh, I didn't know they would look like that at all. I guess I'm always looking to see, do I look like anybody? Or, I guess
Yeah,
really you
sure.
want to know, do I resemble anyone? I've connected with a lot of cousins who I've never met before through Ancestry. And one of them, we share a great grandfather. And he had a picture of my great grandparents when they first married. We don't have any because my grandmother lost all of her photographs in a move. One side of the family, we didn't have anything. So this was golden to me.
Oh
So,
my goodness.
and then to bring it to other people, to bring it back to other people, I find that very exciting.
Yeah, you brought me an article, and you were so excited, and I was like,
I
"Oh my
was.
God!" I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it! It's really cool. And you did it in like seconds, which I know it
Yeah.
doesn't always happen, but you're so good at it. What is it about researching that just sends you? Because
Mhm.
when you talk about it, you light up like
Mhm.
a Christmas tree.
Well, one of the things I love about this kind of research is that it is dynamic. It's constantly changing. Every day, new things are being digitized, new things are being put up on the web. So if just because I've been searching my South American family for a long time, and there are certain things I'm still looking for, but to go through those old Colombian records, and I mean old, look, I'm talking 1700s, but new stuff is coming out all the time, even from way back then. So it's not like, okay, well, I already looked and now that's it, it's done, move on to something else. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. And
Yeah,
that's
it's
kind of
like
exciting.
microfiche and stuff like that is coming online, right?
Well, it's mostly because, mostly, not completely, but a lot of it has to do with the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. They own and operate FamilySearch.org, which they
Right.
provide to the public for free. And they make it their business. It's a religious reason, and I'll probably explain it badly. It has something to do with when you want to be sealed, you have to know a certain number of past generations in order to be sealed. So that's why genealogy is important to them. And so they go around the world literally photographing pages of documents and then making them online and available to the public.
Wow, that's amazing. I know I found on Family Search, I
Mhm.
found the records of census, a couple of years of that for each of my sides of my
That's
family.
exciting.
And
Yeah.
I found the actual when they came into Ellis Island, my two grandfathers.
Oh, love
So
that.
I have that too. So I just think that's so cool.
It
Um,
really is.
and it's so funny because of one of my grandfather's signatures. Um, my capital I in DiIulio looks like a capital J, which causes that's where you're talking about that Scribner error, those errors
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
find, and that's how it was produced. And then later on, documents said something else. And then we have his name on different documents as Santo, Santi, Santa, Santo. So there's a lot of different documents with
Yes,
different names, but it's basically the same person,
of
everything,
course.
everything else matches up.
Yeah.
So that to me is an interesting thing. And that's where your magic is. You're like, oh, this equals that. You're like a PI of genealogy. I love it.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a detective, so I've gotten my wish.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing it. It's a real passion. And a few people have asked me to do things for them, and I love to do that. And I never accept payment for it because I don't want it to become a job.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Because it's in your heart.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, your email, if they want to reach out, if they want to have some work done, is stephgen65@gmail.com. Real quick,
Yes,
tell me a story recently about someone who was looking for, I believe it was his sister, and he was
yes.
looking and he unfortunately passed, but then you were able to find
I
out.
gotta tell you, there's an amazing ending to this story. It's not even over yet. So a friend of ours, her father, she was telling me, her father spent the last 12 years of his life looking for where his sister had been buried. She had been born and died before he was even born. And all he had was a cemetery card, which said the name of the cemetery and the location and the plot. He looked it up and he assumed that it was in New Jersey because it was the closest cemetery with that name to where he lived in New York. And he had stacks of pages of correspondence with this cemetery, insisting that his sister was buried there. And they kept telling him, no, we're sorry, she's not here. So she asked me, could I look into it? And she said, do I want all these stacks of papers? And I said, no, just give me the cemetery card. So I looked at that, and literally within, 15, 20 minutes, I had the answer. She was actually buried in the cemetery, the same name, but in Detroit, Michigan. So now that I told her that, and I sent her all the information, we reached out to findagrave.com, which is an organization that goes around taking photographs by request of headstones for people. And we put in a request and we got one. There is no headstone for her. So what she's actually doing, and she only told me this about 3 days ago, she and her husband are flying to Detroit. They are going to, they were going to exhume her, but the funeral director said after 100 years, there would be nothing left.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So she's going to take some of the soil that she has decomposed into, and she's going to bring it home. And she's having the headstone with her father and her aunt's name on it changed to include this aunt, and they're going to inter this with them.
Oh, that's such a beautiful story.
Isn't that amazing? And it gives her, she says, I'm so relieved because this was her father's dying request to her to please continue the search for my sister.
That's so amazing.
So to me, that's powerful. I'm so happy to have played a small part in that.
Yeah, without a doubt. That is absolutely amazing. And one last thing before we go to break is that the photographer who takes the picture of the headstone, they put flowers, you had told me.
Yes, they did.
Which I think is so sweet.
It is.
It's so sweet. We're going to take a quick break. Okay. You're listening to Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne on JVC Broadcasting and iHeartRadio. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Stephanie Caputo. Welcome back to Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne. I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 take action success coach and strategist. If you would like to be a guest or lift up your business, product, or non-for-profit, or if you have a question or comment, we would love to hear from you. Email us at healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. That's healthylifestylewithla@gmail.com. I talked about my team before, and my team and I teach founders and entrepreneurs like you how to put a sustainable business model under their dream. So as a result of our work, my clients grow their business anywhere from 75 to 200% over the course of 12 to 18 months. I actually have a client recently that grew at 646% in less than 18 months. So my clients gain clarity, take powerful actions. They're more focused, they're happier, they make more money. They have more free time to spend doing what they love and become the next best version of themselves. They feel educated, empowered, inspired, and ignited. So I'm taking on a few more clients. If this sounds good to you, give us a call, reach out to ldcstrategies.com. We'd love to have that conversation with you. So today we are talking with Stephanie Caputo. She is a genealogist extraordinaire. She's actually discovered some things that I was looking for my family and did it in lickety split time. It was amazing. If you'd like to reach out to her for help with your genealogy, when you hit a wall, this is when you talk to her, not when you're trying to lay out your family tree, but when you hit a wall, she's the one to go to. Her email is Steph, STEPH, GEN 65 @gmail.com. That's StephGen65 @gmail.com. Welcome back, Stephanie. Oh my God, I'm loving this conversation. And I just love that you love doing the research. But I have another question for you. I know for a fact that you got into Joplin research. How did that come about? It was you and your dad, right?
Yes. My father is Edward A. Berlin, and he is an author. and he is the world's leading authority on Scott Joplin. He wrote The King of Ragtime and countless articles. So the problem with my father is that
Oh, no problem.
his birthday and Father's Day are a week apart.
Huh?
So I don't know how hard it is for you to, if anyone out there has ever tried to shop for your father who's now in his 80s. He doesn't drink beer. He doesn't play golf. He doesn't watch sports. I could never think of what to get for him. And then his birthday is a week later. So I started thinking, what can I give him that nobody else can? And I said, I'm going to find him some new Joplin records. And I don't mean records to play for music, but historical genealogical records. So I put the Scott Joplin tree up in Ancestry to see what would shake out, and then to see where my missing pieces were, what was, not coming up. And that's where I went after. And that's when I found Scott Joplin in the 1915 census for the New York census. And anyway, doing all this research, I kept seeing all these other holes. Nobody seemed to know when his parents died, either one. There was no date of death for either one of them. But I also kept finding more and more information about his brother, Robert. And I spent 3 years trying to convince him to write an article about Robert Joplin. He had no interest. He was too busy doing other things. So finally, it was Father's Day once again, and I had come across Robert Joplin's divorce paperwork from 1899 in Texas, 21 or 23 pages worth of biographical information. And I printed it out, and I snuck next door. My parents lived next door. And I took a Scott Joplin record, an old, record player, a record out of his collection. And I put these papers inside of it, and I wrapped it up, and I gave it to him for Father's Day. And he opens it up and he says, "Oh, this record. Yeah, I don't think I have this record." And I was like, "Yeah, I think you do. Look inside." So he opens up, and there's a folder that says, "Not that kind of record." And he opens it up and he sees what it is. He literally rushed downstairs to his office to start transcribing it, you see, because all of the old documents, they're all handwritten in script. So he's going to translate this now, put it all into words. That's when he decided, okay, we're going to write this article. And we did. And it was published in Syncopated Times. I'm going to guess it was about 3 years ago.
Okay.
It got great response. And people said, "We've been waiting for somebody to do this." And I'm like, "You see, I told you." So now it was 3 years later. I continued the research into that area. I always love to push back. How far back can I go? I know a lot of people like to come forward and find out who are their cousins that are running around on bicycles right next to them right now. I like to go as far back as I can. So I wanted to find out, where did Scott Joplin's parents come from? Where did they come from? So I started researching that. And finally, I had enough information that my dad said, "Okay, let's do it. Let's write another article." It was actually it just came out in publication yesterday. Again, it's Syncopated Times, 3 full pages. The digital link will be out in a few days, I think.
Wow. If you send me the digital link, we'll include
I will.
Here so everybody can read it.
I was invited to speak at the Scott Joplin Festival this year, which my father has spoken at many times.
The Uncovered Lost History?
It was interesting. Well, pardon?
It was the Uncovered Lost History?
Yes, it was Uncovering Lost History. It was fun. It was a symposium about how some of the tips and techniques that I use to find the unfindable. How do I find what doesn't just come up in Ancestry with the little leaf that tells you it's this, it's that, the other thing? Right. How do you find the stuff that doesn't come up? And so it was wonderful, and it got a really good response, and people were very happy afterwards. And that was it. So that's
I love that Joplin Festival. That your father's a rock star there.
He absolutely is.
Did you know that?
After my symposium, people were asking for my autograph and to take a picture with me. But I knew it wasn't really because it was me. It was because I was Dr. Berlin's daughter.
Oh, excuse me.
But I'll take it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Really, people ran after him just to get his autograph in his book. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
With their book, he would go up to him with his book and take his autograph. Oh, that's so cool.
Yes.
That's so cool. Yeah, he's a rock star. I love it.
So it was exciting.
I remember listening to that music when I was young at
Yeah,
home.
oh,
He
that's
would play it all the
great.
time, and yeah, my dad loved it. When he directed bands, he would have bands play it, and yeah, that's not easy stuff. That's not easy
Wonderful.
music at all. But ragtime's tough. It's because it's very
Yeah.
syncopated, so it's really good. I love that story. I love that you wrote 2 articles. How does that feel? How does it make you feel when you write articles like that? That's not what you normally
It was
do.
good. I felt good. For the longest time, I thought that this kind of research that I was doing really didn't matter to anybody except for me and my father. And to find out that all these people were hungry for it and were excited by it, it was thrilling. I was happy to give it, you know?
Yeah. Can't wait to the next one. I know you'll
Yeah,
find more because
we have an idea. We're got another one in the works.
is that you want to give us a sneak peek, a hint on the radio?
I don't know if you would want me to or not.
Okay, all right. I tried. I had to
Yeah.
try. So,
It's not on Scott Joplin per se. See, my father's a musicologist, so he comes at this all from the music angle. I'm more of a historian, so I come at it from a different point of view.
I love that. And that really meshes very nicely together.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I wish my father had met your father because my father's a musician. So the two of them would have gone on for days and we could have hung out. So
Oh, that's great.
so I do have a question for you is tell me the strangest thing that you found over your
Mhm.
genealogy history.
Okay. This is when I was researching the South American branch of my family. That's my great grandfather, Mitridates Plata. My grandfather was born in New York, but then raised in Peru for his early years, and then they came back.
Wow.
Now, we already knew that my great grandparents had a huge divorce in 1924 that was splashed all over the newspapers, literally from coast to coast. My great grandmother and my grandfather and his siblings were living in Chicago. Mitridates was he was the Peruvian consul to America. And so he was a diplomat. So he was still in Peru and he was en route back, which of course back then they did by ship. It was probably about a week or two. And he met a dancing girl and fell in love on his way back in 1924 and arranged he was going to marry her. Her family found out and contacted my great grandmother, who I can't imagine how this must have been. Just as they were having their engagement party at like the Waldorf Astoria in the city or one of these fancy hotels, she comes bursting inside with the children and the detectives in tow, to break the whole thing up. So anyway, she tried to divorce him.
Oh,
He claimed diplomatic immunity because, which was upheld. So she was actually the first person in the United States to bring a divorce in the federal courts. And she won, and they did get a divorce. But that wasn't the strangest part. That was just a little background.
just back up for a second. So
Yeah.
back then, why would he be arrested for doing what he was doing back then?
Bigamy?
Oh, bigamy, yes.
He wasn't arrested, but she was divorcing him because he
Yes,
was going to
right.
marry
Gotcha.
this woman, and he was already married.
Oh my God.
So in
You need theme
researching,
music.
I know. So I research in all different ways, and that's my biggest tip to anybody doing research. Don't just look at ancestry or just look at Find My Past or family search. Do everything. Search the newspapers. So what I decided to do, I was literally just searching on google.com and I put Mitridates Plata in quotes. And something came up and I started to read. My first thought was, oh, this is the wrong person, but it's not, you see, because there's only one Mitridates Plata in the world ever. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So I'm reading this story and my stomach dropped and I went, oh my God. You see, his father and family were very wealthy in Peru. Oh, it's so hard. Their story, the father was a doctor, a medical doctor, and I guess he gave his plantation to his oldest son. And there is a YouTube video folk song about the torturous way that he treated the farm people, the peasants. And it actually led to an uprising in where they murdered him. This would have been my great uncle, great uncle. And
It wasn't so great.
yeah, and eventually led to the lands being given back to the indigenous people.
Oh, wow.
Eventually, not fast. This was he was murdered in 1914. I don't think they were returned back to him until like the 1930s or 40s.
Yeah.
But there's a video, a music video. I'm watching this. I mean, I was stunned about my family. And it's so strange to think that they had perpetrated such horrors. And
Yeah.
it was a part of our family history that we had no idea anything about. So
Yeah.
that was pretty strange.
Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
you have to kind of process that.
I didn't even, the truth is that when my grandmother was still alive at the time, now she died at 99, she said to me, "Don't tell your Uncle Billy." That was her son. She said she didn't think he would be able to handle it.
Wow.
Imagine, and something that happened, to me, I look at it through a different lens. Even my mother was upset by it, but I feel like it's history. It happened and I didn't do it.
It's no reflection on you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was just kind of stunning to hear this and to read that children learn about this in school. So
In
one of the cousins I connected with is from this family. She's actually descendant from the one who was murdered. And she and I were emailing, and her first question to me was, "How much do you know?" And I said, "The good, the bad, and the ugly." And she said, "Okay, I just want to make sure." But she goes back to Lima. Her family is still there. So she went back about a year or two ago, and she took pictures of where the plantation was. And she told me that when she had to ask for help to getting there, she didn't tell them her last name, because she said even so many years later, she wasn't sure how it would be taken.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. I can't. It's amazing.
I'm telling you though, everybody has something like that in their history.
No doubt. And
Yes.
so, but see, I look at it with a different lens too, because I look at it as, but look at how far we've come. We don't
Yes, very
accept
good.
that anymore. Back then, it was more acceptable to have that kind of barbaric type, what we would refer to
Yes.
as a barbaric type of scenario going on, that it was okay to treat people like that. And
Yes.
today it's not okay. It wasn't okay
Right.
back then either, but it was more accepted back then. It was society and culture. So I look at it as we are evolving ever so slowly, but we are evolving as
Very
a
good.
culture and as humans to say, oh, no, that's not good. When somebody says something about slavery, I was like, really? I said, we evolved from using lions and people as entertainment. So I'm thinking we're doing pretty good.
Right.
So,
Very good way to think of it.
right. It's just,
I like that.
I look at the evolution and that we have to evolve, and that's how I know someone is learning. When we keep repeating the same mistake over and over again, we're not having a learning curve. That's a different conversation. But if we learn from our mistakes and try to get better, then that's good. That's called evolution. So,
Yes, very good.
I look at your story as evolution, because I know you don't even like to use a knife. I had to give you a butter knife and you didn't want to. No, I'm not kidding. So it was it's such a good story. So that was the strangest finding. And you love helping other people find their true stories and helping them research when they hit a wall. Why is that? So that discovery again comes along?
Yes, it's a discovery. And it allows them to keep going, to keep, there's something about being able to help other people. I'm sure everybody has felt this in whatever they have a skill in.
Yeah.
If you can share it with other people and it makes them light up and it makes them happy and it gives them something that they didn't have before, that's an amazing gift that I have even for, it's a gift to me as well as a gift to the person.
Yes. Yeah. I know what you're saying, because as a coach, it fills me up to see them achieve their dreams.
Yes.
It's like, it's almost as if it's mine.
Yes.
It's almost like we co-op it. So it's just such a good feeling to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, thank you for the research and finding both of my grandfather's information. That was so amazing.
Oh, great.
So let's do this. I'm a take action coach. Our listeners might be out there going, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? So would you share how to do findings, how to do the family?
Yeah, sure.
All that stuff. Yeah.
The first thing that I would do is, if there are any older people in the families that are still living, go to them and start talking to them. Bring photographs. Ask them if they don't have pictures, writing on the back of the photographs. Ask them, who is this? Who is that? What do you remember about this? I actually did this with my grandmother before she passed. And she had a memory like an elephant, so it was great. Ask them, because they're a great source of information. They may get some things wrong, but it doesn't matter, because it often will lead you on the right path anyway. So I would start within your own family and see what anybody has. My mother for years had this old postcard collection that belonged to her great aunt. And when she and I were researching that branch of the family, we started digging through the postcards, and we discovered that my great-grandfather's sister married into royalty. And we didn't know that, in French royalty, but it was in the postcards. So that's why you got to talk to people, find out who's got anything that's old letters, old postcards, old photos. That's a great way to start. And then when you want to turn to online, because they have such fabulous tools available now. Ancestry, I think, has the best search engine, but they're also the most expensive.
Right.
Family Search is free. I would probably start with a free one. They're also very good. They all have different kinds of search engines. I just find that Ancestry allows me to do the complicated kind of searches that I like to do. But still, I would start with Family Search because it's free. If you're lucky enough that there is a Mormon church near you, you actually can go, because there are some things that are not available to you even on FamilySearch.com from your desktop, but you can go to a church and get it there. In fact, there happens to be one 15 minutes from me here, and I have been there several times to print out certain things. So I would definitely start with that, and start with yourself. If you're going to create a tree, put yourself in, put your parents. Do you know who their grandparents were? You just start at the beginning and see where it leads you. Ask questions. What did people do for a living? That occupation is a great way to locate people. Where did they come from? Really, you have to start with something. And if there's really nobody, and it's just a person by themselves, then you really need to turn to the records and see what pops up, and then take it from there. And then I search the newspapers. The newspaper sites, again, they all require, at least two of them do require an account, and they do cost, but there are free ones.
And you can go to the library too, because they have a lot of databases.
You can even use Ancestry.com for free at library, but you can't create a tree on it.
Right.
But still you can look for things. So that's what I would start with. That's where I would start.
I love it. So great information. And when you get stuck, reach out to Stephanie. Stephanie is the person who will be able to get you unstuck. You're a magician. You're a great detective. And I appreciate you being on today. Reach out to Stephanie at gen65@gmail.com. That's stephgen65@gmail.com. Information will be with this episode as well. So feel free to reach out. Hopefully I'll get the link. And as soon as I get the link to your articles, I'll include that as well, so you guys can start reading about Joplin, especially if you're following that, and also know that her dad was a superhero, still is a superhero. So he's very well known. Shout out to Dad, to the doc. So thank you again for being on Healthy Lifestyle.
Thank you for asking me.
And thank you for joining us today on Healthy Lifestyle with Lorianne. I hope we earned the privilege of your time. Look for our show next Saturday at 3 p.m. on JVC Broadcasting and iHeartRadio. We also can be found on all major platforms, and would be so grateful if you please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Until next time, I am Coach Lorianne, America's #1 Take Action Success Coach and Strategist. Let your dreams be bigger than your fears. Let your life be filled with joy. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Take care. Thanks again, Stephanie.